I stood in front of my grandmother's Victorian house, my house, watching as the SALE sticker was slapped across the SALE sign. My father's Mercedes pulled into the driveway and he stepped out with that self-satisfied smile I'd grown to hate. "It's done, Sarah. The money will be in your brother's account by tomorrow morning." He adjusted his expensive tie, not even looking at me. "David's marriage will be saved, and you can stop being so dramatic about this whole situation." At 32, I'd learned that my father's definition of dramatic meant standing up for myself. The house had been my grandmother Martha's final gift to me, not to my father, and certainly not to my older brother David, who'd gambled away his own inheritance along with his wife's family fortune. "You had no right," I said, my voice shaking. "Grandma left this house to me in her will. It wasn't yours to sell." Dad's expression hardened. "I'm still the executor of the estate. David needs this money to pay back his wife's family. Without it, Caroline will leave him, and our family's reputation will be ruined." "Our reputation?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean your country club membership and business connections?" "Sarah Jean Morrison." My mother's voice cut through the air as she hurried up the walkway. "Your brother is about to lose everything. His marriage, his position at the firm. Where's your compassion?" The irony of her asking about compassion wasn't lost on me. When I'd lost my job during the pandemic and asked to move into this house early, they'd refused, saying I needed to learn independence. But when David lost $500,000 at underground poker games, suddenly family loyalty was paramount. He lost that money illegally gambling Mom. Caroline's family could press charges. "Which is exactly why we need to make this right," Dad interrupted. "The house sold for $875,000. That covers David's debt and saves your brother's marriage. End of discussion." I pulled out my phone, showing them the message I'd received that morning. "Except it's not. I spoke to Mr. Patterson at the notary's office. He needs to see all of us tomorrow morning. Something about documentation irregularities." Dad's face flickered with something I'd never seen before. Fear. "Cancel it. I'll handle the paperwork myself." "Mr. Patterson said that's not possible. He specifically needs to see you, me, David, and Mom, together." Mom touched Dad's arm nervously. "Frank, maybe we should." "Fine," he snapped. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m. But this changes nothing. The house is sold." That evening, I sat in my apartment surrounded by boxes of Grandma Martha's papers. I'd been going through them ever since Dad announced he was selling the house 3 weeks ago. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, beyond the obvious injustice. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "You're really going to make this difficult, aren't you?" I stared at his message, remembering how close we'd been as kids before money and Dad's expectations had twisted him into someone I barely recognized. "The notary called me, not the other way around," I replied. "Just sign whatever they need you to sign. Caroline's family is breathing down my neck." I thought about Caroline, my sister-in-law, who'd stood by David through 3 rounds of rehab for his gambling addiction. Her family had helped hide his losses for years to avoid scandal. Now they wanted their money back, and somehow, that had become my problem. Another text from David. "You don't even need the house. You have your teaching job. A job that barely covers my rent." I typed back. "The house was my future." "My marriage is my future," came his reply. I picked up Grandma Martha's last photo album, the one from the year before she died. She'd been so careful with her estate planning, so specific about who got what. David received her stocks and bonds, Dad got her business holdings, and I got the house she bought with her own money back in 1978. Something caught my eye in one of the photos, a document on her desk, partially visible. I grabbed my magnifying glass, squinting at the details. The heading read, "Property Deed and Trust," but what stopped my heart was the date, 1978, the same year she bought the house. My hands trembling, I started digging through the boxes with renewed purpose. If that document still existed. A knock at my door made me jump. Mom stood there, looking older than I'd ever seen her. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I stepped aside, watching as she took in the chaos of papers and boxes. "Your father means well," she started. "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't defend him, not this time." She sat heavily on my couch. "David made mistakes, but he's family. We have to help family." "By destroying my future? How is that fair?" "Life isn't fair, Sarah. You're strong, independent. David needs this more than you do." I looked at my mother, really looked at her. and saw the years of enabling, of choosing peace over justice, of sacrificing one child's needs for another's wants. Mr. Patterson said he found something in the original house documentation, I said carefully, watching her reaction. Something that could change everything. Mom's face went pale. Sarah, please, whatever he found, your father will be devastated if... She stopped herself, but it was too late. They knew something. Something about the house, about Grandma's property, about why Dad had rushed to sell it so quickly. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The notary's office was colder than I remembered. Mr. Patterson, a man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses, sat behind his mahogany desk as our family filed in. David arrived last, Caroline conspicuously absent. Thank you all for coming, Mr. Patterson began, pulling out a thick folder. During our standard review of the property sale, we discovered some unusual circumstances regarding the house's original purchase. Dad shifted in his chair. I don't see why this requires a special meeting. The sale is complete. Not quite, Mr. Morrison. Mr. Patterson adjusted his glasses. You see, I was reviewing the original deed from 1978 and I found something interesting. The house wasn't just purchased by Martha Morrison. He pulled out a yellowed document, and I watched my father's face drain of color. It was purchased jointly by Martha Morrison and Teresa Bennett. Mom gasped. I frowned, the name striking a familiar chord. Who's Teresa Bennett? David asked, looking confused. Dad stood up abruptly. This meeting is over. That name has nothing to do with. Teresa Bennett was my birth mother. I cut in, the realization hitting me like a thunderbolt. The woman who died when I was 2, whom my family never discussed. Mom had adopted me when she married Dad a year later. Mr. Patterson nodded. According to these documents, Martha Morrison and Teresa Bennett jointly purchased this property with the explicit provision that it would pass to Teresa's child, you, Sarah, upon Martha's death. The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. That's impossible, Dad sputtered. Martha left the house to Sarah in her will, not through some ancient deed. Actually, Mr. Patterson continued, the will merely confirmed what was legally established in 1978. This property was never part of Frank Morrison's estate to execute. It transferred directly to Sarah upon Martha's death through this binding trust agreement. David jumped up. This is ridiculous. The sale's already gone through. The money's been promised to Caroline's family. Any sale would have required Ms. Sarah Morrison's explicit consent as the legal owner, Mr. Patterson stated firmly. The current sale is invalid. I looked at my father, pieces falling into place. You knew. That's why you rushed the sale through. You knew if anyone looked too closely. Mom started crying softly. Frank, we should have told her. Told me what? I demanded. Dad collapsed back into his chair, suddenly looking every bit his 60 years. Your grandmother and your birth mother were best friends. They'd bought the house together when Teresa got pregnant with you. They had this dream of creating a safe place for you, no matter what. When Teresa died, Mom continued gently, Martha made us promise to never sell the house, to make sure it stayed yours. It was Teresa's only real asset, her gift to you. The weight of this betrayal crushed my chest. Not just the recent attempt to sell the house, but the decades of silence about my birth mother, about her friendship with Grandma, about this legacy they created for me. So you tried to steal my inheritance twice, I said to my father. Once from my birth mother and now from grandmother. I was protecting this family. Dad exploded. David needs this money, your brother is a grown man who gambled away his own inheritance. I finished. That's not my responsibility. David stood up, his face red. You can't just let my marriage fall apart. Caroline's family will press charges. Perhaps, Mr. Patterson interjected, you should have considered that before gambling with their money. I turned to the notary. What happens now? The sale is void. The house remains yours, Ms. Morrison. Additionally, he pulled out another document. There's the matter of the trust account. What trust account? Dad asked sharply. Mr. Patterson smiled slightly. The one established by Martha Morrison and Teresa Bennett in 1978, tied to the property. It seems your grandmother continued contributing to it until her death. He slid a bank statement across the desk. The number made my eyes widen. That's enough to cover David's debt, Mom whispered. No, I said firmly, standing up. That's my birth mother's legacy, and Grandma's love. I'm not using it to enable more gambling. David stormed out, slamming the door. Dad followed, his authority finally shattered. Mom lingered, tears in her eyes. Your birth mother would be proud of you, she said softly. She was always strong too. That's what scared your father. He could never control her, and he can't control you either. I watched them leave, then turned back to Mr. Patterson. Thank you for finding the truth. He smiled, handing me the original deed. Your grandmother brought these documents to me for safekeeping months before she died. She said someday they'd be needed. She also left you this. He handed me an envelope, Grandma's elegant handwriting on the front. For Sarah, when the truth comes out. The envelope trembled in my hands as I sat on the porch of my house. Truly my house now. The setting sun cast long shadows across the Victorian architecture that my birth mother and grandmother had chosen together. Taking a deep breath, I opened Grandma Martha's letter. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then the truth about the house has finally come to light. Your mother Teresa and I bought this house during her 7th month of pregnancy. We'd sit on this very porch, drinking lemonade, while she talked about all her dreams for you. Teresa knew her heart condition meant she might not see you grow up. That's why we created this sanctuary, a piece of both of us that would always be yours. The trust fund was her idea too. My daughter will never be at anyone's mercy, she'd say. What you don't know is that your father tried to sell this house right after Teresa died. That's when I added the legal protections. I love your father, but I recognize in him what Teresa always saw, a man who confuses control with love. In the attic, behind the false wall in the north corner, you'll find a box. Teresa left it for you. It's time you knew all of your story. Love, Grandma Martha. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Texts from David, missed calls from Dad, a voicemail from Mom. I ignored them all as I climbed to the attic, my flashlight beam dancing across dusty furniture. The false wall panel came loose easily, revealing a metal box. Inside, I found photographs I'd never seen before. My birth mother, young and radiant, her hand on her pregnant belly. Her and Grandma Martha working in the garden. A document caught my eye. A letter dated 2 days before her death. My precious daughter, I'm writing this from the hospital, knowing my heart might not hold out much longer. But you should know you were born from the strongest love a mother could have. Your father, Frank, is a good man in many ways, but he believes love means keeping people dependent. Don't let anyone make you dependent, my sweet girl. Martha promises to watch over you, to make sure you become your own woman. The house and trust fund aren't just about money. They're about choice. Your choice. Always remember, you come from 2 women who chose their own paths. All my love, Mom Teresa. Tears blurred my vision as my phone rang again. This time it was Caroline, my sister-in-law. Sarah? Her voice was thick with emotion. I left David. I'm pressing charges about the gambling. Caroline, I'm so sorry. Don't be. Your standing up to them gave me the courage to do the same. She paused. David needs help, real help, not more enablers. After we hung up, I sat among the photographs and letters, pieces of my history falling into place. A text from Mom appeared. Your father isn't speaking to anyone. David checked into rehab. Can we talk? I invited her over the next morning. She stood awkwardly in the entrance, taking in the house with new eyes. I should have told you about Teresa years ago, she said. I was so afraid you'd love her memory more than me. Mom, you've been my mother in all the ways that matter, but I deserve to know my whole story. She nodded, tears falling. Martha tried to tell me, about Frank's controlling nature. I thought I was protecting our family by keeping the peace, but I was just teaching you and David to accept manipulation as love. We spent the morning going through Teresa's box. Mom shared stories she kept buried for 30 years, painting a picture of my birth mother's vibrant, independent spirit. A week later, David called from rehab. I get it now, he said quietly, why the house was so important. It wasn't about the money. No, I agreed. It was about standing up for ourselves. I've been thinking about Teresa and Grandma Martha, he continued, how they planned so carefully to protect you. While Dad just taught me to run from consequences. Over the next few months, our family slowly rebuilt itself. Dad remained distant, his power structure finally broken. Mom started therapy, unpacking decades of enabling behavior. David focused on his recovery, finally facing his addiction without financial bailouts. I renovated the house, honoring its original character while making it my own. Each repair felt like a conversation with Teresa and Grandma Martha, a continuation of their legacy of independence and strength. One evening, sitting on the porch with a glass of lemonade like they used to do, I found myself smiling. My father had tried to solve everything with money, never understanding that real inheritance isn't about property or trust funds. It's about the strength to stand up for yourself, the wisdom to recognize true love from control, and the courage to protect what matters. The house stands as a testament to 3 generations of women who chose their own paths. And now, finally, I understand why they fought so hard to preserve it, not as walls and windows, but as a symbol of unshakable independence.